Hey everybody, welcome back to another Simulacra Developer Diary. My name is always CJ. So I apologize that last week we didn't have a video. I was frankly both out of town for the tail end of the week and also just had a lot on my plate. Frankly, due to the nature of these videos that I'm trying to kind of capture what's going on in each week, I can't really, record a bunch of them ahead of time or anything. So um, there's going to be just some weeks that this happens. I, as always, will try to be as upfront and clear as possible so that there's no questions about what's happening with the development of the game. But yeah, thank you for your patience in that regard. Um, Real life does happen. I'm hoping to quickly go over what happened last week and also this week. Um, so I apologize if this is a little rambly or goes by a little fast. Um, so last week I was digging into a little bit of audio, and the reason I'm kind of running around here is that one of the cool improvements that was not available in a much earlier version of Unreal, which was when I looked at it, is the idea of being able to override uh, the audio listener for the game. It was previously just hard attached to the player camera, and that meant that when you would be approaching something like this campfire, so you can hear that it's getting louder. It's naturally crackling kind of on the right hand side because that's the direction it is. And then as I pass by, it kind of fades out nicely. Um, it was basically hard coded to the camera, so I was getting this really weird behavior where the player would essentially be standing in a campfire and wouldn't be able to hear it. But then as they were leaving, um, you know, there were certain positions where you could hear it and almost not see it, and that was really defying the expectations. So fortunately, they added in this really nice little clean node to the blueprint system. Just set audio listener override. You can attach to any component. Right now, I just have it hard attached to my player mesh, which is not ideal. It mainly fixes the position. It messes with the spatialization a little bit, which you may have heard um, as I kind of get up close to the campfire. If I then rotate around, you can hear it kind of swirling between the channels, which is clearly not ideal. It's basically attached not only the position but also the rotation of the player's mesh. So eventually I'll be fixing that so that it is essentially fixed to the player's position, but it is matching the camera orientation so that you get both kind of the best of both worlds, I guess. The other thing that I was learning about, just kind of improving, was the attenuation settings. Um, and I won't really dig into these, partly because I don't frankly feel like I know enough to be any kind of authority on them. There's a lot of really excellent literature on it. But basically, what I was doing was switching from the linear attenuation, which is just a straight linear fall off, to natural sound, which is a little bit more of a kind of a natural like a bell curve kind of deal. And that makes a whole lot more sense with my game being kind of an outdoor game. So there's not a lot of um, kind of objects for the sounds to be bouncing off of, particularly things like walls. Um, so the way that I set it up right now, just for simplicity and ease of maintenance, is I have a generic attenuation and a combat attenuation, so that I can make sure that those combat sounds are nice and sharp and that they're a little bit more prevalent than, say, the crackling of the fireplace and that kind of thing. So yeah, like I said, that the literature and the tutorials and stuff that I was looking at are really, really easy to find. Frankly, I was reminded by the tutorial videos that pop up in the launcher for the Unreal Engine. But if you have any trouble finding any kind of quality stuff to find, either look at the Unreal Engine channel as a great resource, and it's linked through my channel. Um, but just let me know, and I can definitely dig something up for you. So the other thing that I've been really excited to look into, but intentionally kind of held back, was this idea of a hybrid procedural system for the encounters. And what I mean by that is generally procedural generation is like, for example, the randomization on this asset is completely procedural. It's based on its placement in the world. It will switch between whether it's drying fish or uh, you know uh, furs or blanket, or if it's just completely blank, something like that. It's 100% procedural based on its location. Um, and then to the other side, there's 100% hand placed, handcrafted. I put it there, it's going to stay exactly that way. Um, I wanted a procedural system that had handcrafted components that it was comprised of. And a really good example of that kind of crystallized a lot of my thinking was there's an excellent article written about Spelunky and the way that the designer approached that game was essentially to handcraft each of the individual rooms that the game, play space was comprised of, and then used a procedural system to both stitch them together in an interesting way so that each level has a main play path. It's got secondary areas that have, higher concentration of treasure and that kind of thing. But then also some micro variation, kind of like I was just showing with this piece, that as you each time it's stamped down, it's just a tiny little bit different. But my interest there is very similar to Spelunky in that each time I use the system, I can create both of a very fun set of encounters that I know that they're put together well, they're balanced, and that individually they function in a kind of an excellent capacity. But then also getting that really nice variety, so that if you like the game, as you're coming back to it, you've got a lot of freshness. Um, so basically, the way that works in my system is I had previously been using these encounter rulers, and they were essentially just tools to help me figure out the play space. So this is supposed to be a small encounter. A larger encounter would cover this kind of territory with a little bit of kind of buffer around the area. The space would be literally kind of figuring out what kind of buffer zones I need between these encounters so that the player's got some nice breathing room after a really intense firefight, or they're not bleeding together in an awkward fashion. And so I'd set up this ruler that basically is just a cylinder to visualize that space. But I realized I could use that as kind of a kind of double duty if I then created these template areas, and then this is the exact same blueprint. It's just been converted to what I've been referring to as kind of a pylon. So when I create this setup around it, it will then, when it's called, it will basically stamp that encounter over onto the ruler. So I can go into the maps, plop down a bunch of these, make sure that the play spaces are interesting and they're playing well together. They've got nice cover, nice areas to go in and out of the encounters. And then I can come in here and really fine tune and handcraft the individual things. And then when you play it, it will basically just stream all these encounters in, plop them all down, and hopefully be this really nice, rich, kind of stitched together thing. And the way that that works is that I've got this spawn manager that governs, what's being spawned where and everything like that. So right now, if I play the game, I will get this encampment, and that's because of another thing that I really wanted to do, um, which was I was looking at the game This War of Mine. So if I play this again, same thing. I wanted to at least experiment with the control of being able to recreate the same kind of procedural network. The idea being that maybe every time you play the game, it will randomize all of the play spaces, but then when you go back, each of those areas will be familiar, so that you play the game, you come in, and you're like, oh, there's a dweller encampment there, and then if you need to do something particular with a dweller encampment, you know where one is. Um, but that gives me the ability um, to randomize whenever I want if it's driven based on a seed value. So now if I click the little debug flag, and now it's just randomizing it every time I play the game. Um, and the way that that works is that there's a singular map seed, and this dovetails into the tutorial video that I had uploaded previously. This idea of location-based seeded randomization. There's got to be a better term with that. I apologize. It's definitely a mouthful, and I'm pretty sure I change what it is every time. Um, the idea is that you can feed in a single map seed that governs the entire area. It's the same concept as the No Man's Sky, a single number generating an entire world. Um, but then these rulers, because they're placed at different areas in the map, I can use their location in the world, because that's not something that's going to change, to create a new seed value for their individual kind of spaces, so that if I duplicate one, now I've got a central map seed value, and then that map seed value creates a unique seed, kind of an ID for each of these encounters, so that if I want to recreate something, I just set that original map seed to whatever that number is, and I will get the exact same layout for all of my encounters. But then if I want something new, I just change the initial map seed, and I'll get a completely different layout of all of these. Um, so I'm really, really excited by that kind of prospect. And like this War of Mine and XCOM, a lot of the games that I've been looking at, something that's really cool about them is that they give you this really amazing replayability for the game. Not only for the way that the game designer put it together. I'm not saying that I'm in any way an amazing game designer, but I'm hoping to give myself those tools, but then also be able to expose them to the player so that they play a game kind of the way that I intended it, but then they have all the tools to kind of push and pull the experience so that they can have a lot of fun with it. Um, and that's really kind of what I hope to both get out of and provide in terms of this game is something really kind of fun and cohesive in that way. So I realize that was a lot to go over quickly. I apologize for the kind of the rambling nature of it. Um, as always, if you have any questions or suggestions, please let me know. Send me an email, leave me a note in the comments. I love to hear all of your thoughts and your feedback. Um, and along those lines, if there's anything particular that you guys want to see in these videos, or any suggestions to how that I'm doing them, um, please leave that as well. I love to hear it. So thanks you so much again for tuning in. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend, and that I see you again here next week. So take care.